Good, thanks, Will. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ron D'Andrea, and I'm a founder and managing partner of Global Performance Group. We're a performance improvement company dedicated to helping individuals gain the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence necessary to create profitable, sustainable agreements, even with the most demanding customers in our current virtual selling environment. With me today is Will Reddick. Will is head of our marketing department here at Global Performance Group, and Will's responsible for bringing us all together today. So Will, welcome and thank you. Today we're going to spend a short amount of time together to discuss a critical topic in today's virtual selling world. How do you challenge the status quo? How do you dialogue with key stakeholders to identify and prioritize not only the known needs that everyone is selling to, but also identify and prioritize the undiscovered needs that enable you to co-create the optimal solution with your clients, with your buyers, and move discussions from price to value or ROI or lowest total cost of ownership or usage. The focus today is how you can lead a more provocative customer dialogue that transforms the buyer's understanding of his or her own needs, their goals, their outcomes, so you're able to create, shape, and sell value. The end result, you're able to differentiate yourself, your solution, the partnership that you can provide, and you do it in a way that productively challenges the status quo. We've got about 30 minutes together. We're going to save 10 minutes at the end for questions. So as you think of a question, use the Q&A button you see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you have a question, enter it. We'll take questions at the end. Will is going to be monitoring that for us. Okay? So let's get started. Think about your customers. What is their world really like? What we know from our years of experience in the business is today, especially, people are very distracted. The average business person checks his or her email 50 times per day. Mobile users check their screens up to 150 times a day. They're looking at text, they're looking at email, they're looking at Twitter, they're looking at Instagram. Research says that the average attention span, this idea of unbroken concentration, is as short as 8 seconds. There is so much fighting for your customers' attention right now. We know that people are deluged with information in this environment. Research says that 57% of the sales process is completed before a salesperson is even contacted by procurement or other types of professional buyers. Customers have a huge amount of information about you and your competition. So it's really not about accessing the information. It's really about being overwhelmed with too much information and not knowing what's important and what's not. So when we're deluged, what do? We tend to back off. We tend to protect ourselves. Which leads us to the third characteristic today: people are disengaged. Oftentimes they're unsure of their role in the complete process, or they're focused only on their own small contribution. We find today there's little time to develop relationships, either internally or externally, so it becomes even easier to disengage. Gallup says that today, 66% of American workers are disengaged, meaning they show up physically, but they're not contributing what they were hired to contribute. So how do you challenge the status quo? How do you refocus attention on what's important and shift perspectives so that the optimal solution versus the fast or expedient or easy solution is the one that's adopted by your customers? We shared this statistic at our first webinar, and I think it's worth mentioning again. More than 3/4 of the customers surveyed by Forrester Group reported that sellers don't understand their business well enough to be innovation partners, and that too often these sellers are unprepared for the first meeting, which makes it difficult to discover new needs and be able to expand the value of the solution. If you don't understand our business and you're not well prepared, how are you going to help me be an innovation partner? How are you going to help me make the right business decision? How are you going to help me shift my perspective to what's really important? So we should talk about that. What matters most to customers? What matters most to customers is actually the sales experience. You know, we think it's the price. We think it's the service or delivery. We think it's the brand. But over and over again, what we find, according to Corporate Executive Board and other research done, it's the sales experience, how the sales team interacts with stakeholders. Buyers today are looking for new ideas. They're looking for innovative solutions to deal with new challenges. They're looking for new ways to achieve measurable results and avoid significant risks. Everybody thinks it's about price today, but it's really about ROI, achieving goals and avoiding risks. So what does that really mean? Customers today are looking for salespeople who are prepared to help them think differently, who ask the kinds of questions that strike deep to the heart of the real needs that exist, so that these salespeople are able to help them discover and prioritize needs that oftentimes they didn't even know they had, so they can deal with issues before they become problems, so they can achieve specific and very measurable outcomes, and just as importantly, avoid unnecessary risks. In other words, what customers need today is a partner that will challenge them to think and act differently. Let me ask you a question. Think about this for yourself. Have you ever given a customer everything that he or she or they say they want, and yet still they've opted for a different supplier? You didn't get the business? You know, this happened to all of us. We sit back and say, well, you know, why? Why didn't I get the business? Why did I lose? I gave them everything they said they wanted. Well, what we know is you lost the deal because someone else discovered what it was that the customer actually needed. So let's look at this. What if you gave them what they wanted and that wasn't enough to close the deal? What does it mean to provide people with what it is that they actually need? Let's define wants first of all. Wants lie on the surface. Wants are tangible, they're specific, they're measurable, and they're easily communicated, which means they're often discussed. The problem is wants can only be satisfied in one way. So focusing on what somebody says they want greatly narrows the range of positive outcomes. So wants are easy because they're easy to talk about, they're measurable, they're tangible. The problem is there's only one way to satisfy the want. Either I give you what you want or I don't. Either I give you the 10% discount or I don't. If you think about it, wants are the what. Needs, however, lie beneath the surface of the discussion. Needs are general, they're subjective, they're intuitive, they're hard to measure, so they're often vague. But what we do know is that needs greatly expand the range of possible positive outcomes. So let me give you a very simple example. Someone comes to you and says they want a glass of milk. This person says, I want a glass of milk. Milk is a want, it's on the surface, it's easily discussed, it's measurable, it's tangible. Either you give them the glass of milk or you don't. But what if you don't have any milk in your refrigerator? Without understanding the why beneath the what, you'll have to disappoint the customer. So rather than react to what the customer says he or she wants, take the time to understand the reason for the request, the why. Is the person hungry? Is the person thirsty? When you seek to understand the why, you can discover that it's not about hunger or thirst, it's about a calcium deficiency, which requires a dose of calcium every 3 hours. So even though you don't have milk, what the person said it was that he wanted, you have a variety of resources to meet the calcium. You could give them ice cream, you could give them cheese, you can give them almonds, you can give them broccoli, you can give them sardines, for crying out loud. All provide high levels of calcium. All are creative ways to meet the real need, which is this idea of calcium ingestion. So getting beneath the surface wants enables you to co-create the right solution with your customers. Make sense? We need to understand the real why before we can become the creative innovation partners that our customers are looking for today. So think about it. If we take this one step further, we strike even deeper. There's another category of needs that are key to differentiating yourself, differentiating your solution, and differentiating your company as you sell value. We call them unknown needs. You know, what do we mean by unknown needs? Unknown needs come in 3 varieties. Unknown needs are Undiscovered needs. It's a need that the customer doesn't even know that he or she or they have. So it's a need that exists, but there's a lack of awareness on the customer's part that the need exists. Unconsidered needs. Unconsidered needs are needs that the customer knows that they have, but they have not considered your company for the solution. So the customer doesn't bring it into the conversation. Why? Because they never considered you for the need. So if you're frustrated that you provide a full solution and yet your customer is only taking advantage of a small portion of it, it's often because although they recognize the need, let's say for inventory management, they don't think of you as providing inventory management as part of your service. They hadn't considered you as the solution. Third type of need is underappreciated needs. Underappreciated needs are needs that the customer knows exist, but there's so many other priorities. There's so many things that they have to do. The resources are so scarce today. People are being asked to do more with less that they don't really appreciate the impact that that need may have on either their top or bottom line goals or as a way to avoid risk. So they don't understand the full consequences of how that need could affect the business itself. You know, take a look at sustainability goals. I know I've got the need around sustainability. I know we've got to pay attention to it, but that's number 5 on our list right now. When we can help them appreciate the impact and help them appreciate how a full solution can enable them to achieve not only their known needs, their undiscovered, unconsidered, but also underappreciated needs, we've got the ability to create and truly shape the value. So unknown needs help you create, shape, and sell value. And remember, what are we really doing? That's what we're doing as part of the sales process. What do? They help you broaden the sales discussion. Why? Because they create a wider range of criteria. And it enables you to control and really lead a more provocative dialogue. You're adding tremendous value to the customer by not only helping them identify and prioritize what they know they need, but also get deeper so that they're able to come up with not the quick, easy, expedient solution, but the one that meets the depth and breadth of needs, that creates the most value, that brings the highest return on the investment. So think about it again. Wants are the what, needs are the why. But we have to take this one step further in today's world. Each of these needs, known, undiscovered, unconsidered, underappreciated, can come in any one of 3 different categories. They could be needs that are business related. Oftentimes the financial buyer is most interested in the business needs, budget allocation, return on invested capital, being able to reduce costs over a long period of time, the business needs. Their technical needs. If you think about integration with existing programs or platforms, we do a lot of work with the healthcare industry, making sure that this meets the clinical efficacy requirements. The technical needs are important. And just as important in the decision-making process are the personal needs. Those, what it means to the individual in terms of satisfaction, in terms of achievement, in terms of legacy, growth opportunities. Personal needs are a powerful motivating force. So if we think about being able to move these needs, being able to dive beneath the surface, move from what customers think they want and what they talk about what they want, to understand why they want it, and from a different perspective, from a business perspective, from a technical perspective, from a personal perspective, we've got the ability to really create, shape, and sell value. So our recommendation as you go forward is, you can't script the sales dialogue, but what you can do is identify what your research and discovery has helped you identify as the known needs, the requirements that everybody is selling to. Be thinking about the undiscovered needs, needs that the customer may not know that they have, but your experience or your research or your discovery tells you most likely exist. Unconsidered needs, that they know they have them, but they haven't leveraged your solution to satisfy those needs, or underappreciated needs, where you can create a full solution that incorporates these needs. Think about them as business, technical, and personal. So think about it, if I can plan this out, It's one thing to tell the customer that they have undiscovered, unconsidered, and underappreciated needs. It's a very different dialogue, however, when the customer tells you that these are the needs that I have. So how do you get your customers to identify, to prioritize, and share with you these unknown needs? The answer is Stryker questions. The best Stryker questions are those questions that you ask that not only you don't know the answer to, but your customer doesn't know the answer to until he or she or they begin to answer. So remember, asking the same old boring questions your customers already know the answers to, asking the same old boring questions everybody is asking makes you look like everybody else, makes you sound like everybody else, which means your product there must be parity of product as well. Asking these same old boring questions tells the customer that you're not prepared. And what does that do? It encourages them to disengage. So rather than asking the same old boring questions everybody else is asking, questions that you should already have the answer to, questions that don't really add value to your customer, you want to ask questions that get the customer to think differently. Ask Stryker questions that are designed provocative. They're designed to provoke a response. They're designed to provoke a new way of thinking. Stryker questions can transform the experience that buyers have with you. Stryker questions get people to think differently, help them come to a new understanding, and help you really determine the value that you can add to the customer. We look at this as 6 different types of Stryker questions. You've got the validate, challenge, and compare. You've got the rank, shock, and futurize. Let's take a look at them. Validate questions quantify or articulate desired results. When we talk about validate, what example? What is your percentage growth for the coming year? Where are you now in terms of reaching this number? What is your current margin? What increase in margin do you need to achieve in 2021? What you're doing is getting them to articulate and confirm, validate what your research has said so that you're on the same wavelength, you're on the same platform. Challenge questions. Challenge questions provide a reality check using third-party data, information, or executive statements. You know, think about a challenge question is, your growth rate is 5%, yet your top competitors grew 10%. Why the difference? Why are they growing twice as fast as you? You're using the data to challenge their complacency, saying everything is okay. Your prices are 5% higher than the next top 3 competitors that you have. How are you going to demonstrate ROI for a higher price at this higher price? What you're using is using the data to be able to provide a reality check to get customers to articulate what it is that they really need. If you think about comparative questions analyze the hierarchy of value. You know, if you ask people to compare X to Y, what are the major differences in market pressures today versus a year ago or 2 years ago? So what's the difference today from yesterday? How is this project launch more complicated than the last one? And you could add more information. In the age of COVID, how is that complicated today? What you're getting them to do is compare A to B, X to Y to Z, so that you get a sense of not only where we are today, where are we going in the future, where we are today, where have we been in the past. Got a comparison. Stryker questions have to do with rank. Ranking is an effective way to identify and gain agreement on the hierarchy of buyers' needs and goals. For example, rather than saying what's most important to you today, we recommend what are the top 3 challenges you face in gaining market share today. So they're able to articulate the top 3, follow it up. As you look at those top 3 challenges, which one creates the biggest challenge for you and why? What are those 3 greatest threats to achieving your margin goals? When we ask people to expand and be able to rank and prioritize, it helps them think through what's really important and where their challenges really lie. So top 3 challenges, greatest threats. We talk about futurize. Futurize is really when you get people to think of hypothetically the ideal results. Too often we're trapped in the here and now. But what if we weren't trapped in what's the present, but we could visualize the ideal future? If we were to ask people, what would happen to bring this project, what would have to happen to bring this project in on time and under budget? Or if you were able to free up 10% of your person hours in this project, what else would you accomplish with those 10% of new hours, that 10% of increased time availability? And what would that mean to you personally? It's almost as though you have a magic wand and you get them to describe the ideal situation. Then you understand even more fully what it is the customers are really looking for. So striker questions, the validate, the challenge, the compare, the rank, the shock, the futurize. You can't script your dialogue, but you can prepare questions in advance that would enable you to peel back the onion, if you will, to not only identify the known needs, but strike deep beneath the surface to identify and prioritize the depth and breadth of needs, the personal needs, the business needs, the technical needs, thinking about them in terms of undiscovered. Customer doesn't even know they exist. Unconsidered. They're not taking full advantage of the depth and breadth of resources you have to offer, or underappreciated. Those are frequently the needs that lead to innovation and sustainable solutions. It's about creating a provocative dialogue that gets your customers to think differently, but also enables you to create, shape, and sell the value of your solution, which is really what we're talking about. Will, we promised that we would save some time for questions. What questions have come in over the last 20, 25 minutes?
Yeah, we've had a few good ones here. The first question that I see is about the unconsidered versus undiscovered needs. So the question is, couldn't an unconsidered need be an undiscovered need?
Right. It can get fairly complicated if we put too much thought into it. Yes, could an unconsidered need be an undiscovered need? If I don't even know the need exists, so of course I haven't considered your solution for it. What we're really saying is, let's take a step back and think about this from different vantage points, so that it's an undiscovered need if the customer is not aware that it even exists. And part of our job is to help them identify the needs that do exist, even if they're not aware of them. So if we can identify pitfalls, for instance, or dangers or potential risks, that may help them identify needs that they didn't know that they had. So yes, keep the categories clean because it helps you think through the process, but don't be overly concerned about whether it's unconsidered or undiscovered. They can overlap a little bit. The important thing is that we're thinking through a process of how can we create more value for our solution? How can we increase the return on the investment they're going to make? And how do we do that in a way that differentiates us, that really adds value?
All right, we have a couple other questions here. The next one is, how do we handle it when you have buyers that have a bunch of different needs?
Oh, so if I understand this question correctly, this is the one where today major decisions are never made by individuals. What we've seen over and over again is major decisions are teams, and these teams frequently have different goals, aspirations, needs. You could call them KPIs, if you will, key performance indicators. So we know procurement has taken a major role in making decisions and major decisions today. You could be dealing with the C-level buyer, the economic buyer. You could be dealing with the user buyer. The important thing is that you think this through and think about the buying process itself. Number one of the things we know is too often we don't understand the buying process, the steps in the buying process. Part of that is we don't understand the key stakeholders in the buying process. And oftentimes we don't understand with those stakeholders who has a high degree of influence, who controls the resources, who has a high degree of interest. They're not solution agnostic. They really care about the partner that's chosen. Ideally, we want to find people who have a high degree of interest and a high degree of influence and focus our sales time and effort on them. But we can't forget about the influencers. We can't forget about others who have input into the decision itself. What we recommend is you actually plot that out. Don't assume that you know. Take a look and think through who are the key decision makers from most important to least important. Highest level of influence, highest degree of interest, lowest degree of influence, lowest degree of influence. What are the key needs that each one of them has? What are the key performance indicators? Then think about your sales process from there. Start on the opposite. Just as when we're going to ask questions, too often we start the questioning process from the wrong perspective. We sit down and say, so what questions are we going to ask? We say, don't do that. Be thinking about what information do we need to uncover? What needs do we suspect exists based upon our research, based upon the information that we have? And then what questions should we be asking to help the customer identify and prioritize the depth and breadth of needs that exist? It's a different perspective in terms of planning, which leads to a different execution, which leads to a much more provocative, transformative type of dialogue. Anything else, Will? Because we've got about 1 more minute.
Yeah, we have one more question, and it was about shock questions. And are they damaging to the relationship? Could they be damaging to the relationship with the prospect?
Could they be damaging? Could shock questions or challenge questions be damaging? They could be. You have to be careful. Remember, 10% of the meaning in communication comes from the actual words that we use. 90% comes from your voice, through your tone, through your body, how you deliver that message. So we don't want to sugarcoat it. Challenge questions are designed to challenge them to think differently, challenge the status quo. But we can deliver those challenge questions with a high degree of empathy or a high degree of respect. So be thinking about, don't lose the effectiveness of the challenge or shock, but also how do you communicate it in a way that engages the person versus forces them to disengage. Great. Okay, we need to wrap it up. Thank you. Let me just quickly, Global Performance Group, we really focus on what people have to do differently, how they have to do it, and how they have to do it right, how they do it well, and how do they sustain this change in real world so that they're able to really dramatically impact their results. We do a tremendous amount of work with large premium value, premium price sales organizations so that they're able to shift the perspective of these different decision makers away from what appears to be cheapest upfront cost and refocus on what drives the highest return on the investment that they're making. We do a lot of work with buyers. So if we understand how people sell, we also understand how people buy. So procurement professionals and other professional buyers, how do they pay the right price but get maximum value and service in return? And of course, leaders and teams. How do we get the right decisions made by the right people at the right time? How do we move that really frightening statistic of 66% of US workers, 81% of global workers being disengaged, and create the kind of environment where people are contributing what they were hired to contribute? We're going to continue our series of webinars, but we also invite you to join our user group. This is a LinkedIn user group. There's QR code. We invite you to join us. Just take a picture, scan it into your smartphone. You'll automatically become part of the group. On a regular basis, we share new information about what it takes to create these kind of profitable, sustainable agreements, how to question in a more provocative, more productive manner, how to share the right information at the right time, how to negotiate based upon value exchange versus giveaways. It's a great discussion forum. We encourage you to join it. And we encourage you to join us in a few weeks, Wednesday, December 2nd. We're going to talk about nuggets of value. How do you add value to every interaction? With these busy, deluged, distracted, disengaged buyers, how do you make sure that they want to talk to you, that you add value to every interaction that you have with them? We're going to talk about how you provide these nuggets of gold, these nuggets of value that really differentiate you. So join us again December 2nd. Thank you for your participation today. Let us know how we can help.